We start with the latest ridiculous development in the ongoing migrant crisis, and that is one of the Home Office's top officials has admitted that more than 17,000 people have been seeking asylum have simply gone missing in the last year. They've simply gone missing. Sir Simon Ridley made the revelation after being questioned by Tory MP Tim Loughton.
Isn't it strange that conveniently, when faced with a very stiff target, there has been a threefold increase for undetermined reasons, people magically not going forward with their claims? And where are those people?
In most cases, I don't know where those people are.
We have no record of that 307% increase, the 17,316 claims withdrawn in the last year. You haven't a clue where those people now are.
These are people who have made a claim, who we have sought to invite to interviews, or we have sent out questionnaires, who have not responded, and the point at which they are not engaging with the system that leads to a decision, we have withdrawn their claim.
So you tick them off the list, but they haven't gone home.
They haven't
gone home.
I don't know.
We don't know. So you have no idea where those 17,316 people are.
I don't think we know where all those people are. No.
You have no idea. Thank you very much, Chair.
It's astonishing, isn't it? Anyway, join me now is GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope. Chris, yesterday, Lee Anderson discovered they didn't know how many were missing. Today, we discovered that there are actually over 17,000 missing, but they don't know where they are. Now, these are people, Chris, that have been earmarked for deportation. They failed in their asylum claim. A lot of them, we don't know who they are. They could be undocumented illegals, some may be criminals, some may even be terrorists, and yet they've simply disappeared. How do you even begin to quantify the rank incompetence that seems to be in display at the Home Office?
When you're as old as I am, I'm afraid, you get used to this kind of incompetence from the Home Office. I remember back in the 2000s when the issue of foreign national prisoners being released from jail and no one knew where they were. That brought down a Home Secretary at the time. In this situation, there's a backlog of 122,000 asylum claims. Now, what they're trying to do is clear that backlog of those who were older than June 2022 very in short order. But it looks like what the MPs are saying is that the Home Office doesn't really care that much about where they go, what happens to them. 17,316 asylum applicants withdrew from the process. The Home Office doesn't know where they are. They may have left the country. They could use a different route to try and stay in the UK. They don't know where they are. They've gone off the radar, and that is part of the problem, I think, with the Home Office and the way it treats these large backlogs of people they're trying to process. Forget Rwanda. That's a whole different issue, a whole different ball game. Forget the big numbers of net arrivals. 744,000 more people arrived here last year than left. This is the nuts and bolts of the Home Office. Not doing its job properly, not keeping track of where people are going when they withdraw from a process, and now we don't know where they are. They could be anywhere in this country, or they could have left. It does rank of incompetence. You heard the amazement in Tim Loughton's voice there. Tim Loughton is the ranking Tory on the Home Affairs Select Committee. He can't believe what's happened here. It's on repeat with this department.
And Chris, you know, there's that old phrase, you had only one job to do. And these guys have only got one job to do, and it's to control our asylum system. They're patently and measurably failing at that task, which beggars the point, the question, surely heads must roll.
Yeah. Well, you might think that, Martin. Heads very rarely roll in the civil service, certainly in the Home Office. Occasionally ministerial heads roll, don't they? We saw Amber Rudd resign over the Windrush affair. We saw previous Labour Home Secretary resign over issues of foreign national prisoners and issues to do with immigration then. It's unlikely to happen. It is difficult, you know. There are lawyers, of course, go through a process. The process seems quite unwieldy, takes a long time to track. Why is it you can withdraw from a process and then almost disappear? Why isn't the Home Office keeping track on that individual, whether it be through a national insurance number or through their passport? They're monitoring their passport so they know they've left the country. is there not a duty of care there? These are all questions I think GB News viewers could rightly ask of the Home Office, and yet there appears to be no real answer on what they're doing to control the system. I'm not sure Labour would do much better, but it may be a new broom can improve it.
It just seems astonishing to me, Chris. You're longer in the tooth on this, you're more grizzled, you're more exposed to it. But it just staggers me that 17,000 people can simply go off the radar.
Yeah.
They could be in the black economy, they could be doing heaven knows what, and yet they can't be traced. And yet there's another story today, Chris, about Steve Barclay he tried to address earlier in the year this issue of dependence accompanying care workers. We've seen a record spike of care workers, 32,000 of them let in last year, and 174,000 dependents. Now, Steve Barclay had tried to block that, and once again, within Whitehall, within the Blob, met resistance. It beggars the question, Chris, who's actually running the country? Who's in charge of our asylum system? And why can't we kick people out when they get it so blatantly wrong?
What's happening here is 744,000 people arrived here, more arrived than left in the year to the end of December last year. Now, that is way in excess of the sub 100,000 figure the Tories pledged in 2010. It's way more than the figure in 2019 when this government was elected. So how do you deal with it? Well, we're told by Rishi Sunak and his team they want to bring it down. One idea is stopping people arriving here on visas and bringing dependents. The PM has cracked down already on students doing that. Now, where else do you look in the economy? One idea is looking at care workers, stop them bringing, when they arrive to fill the gaps in the workforce in the UK, you can't bring a family member with you. That could cut the number by as many as over 170,000 dependents arriving here, on top of the 140,000 or so migrants arriving here to work in our care system. That could eat into that big number, maybe cut it down by a quarter or a third. But the problem is with these big aggregate numbers is when you look at what you're doing here, do you then want care homes to go without labour? Do you want old people who are maybe disabled, not to have the care they deserve? If so, are you willing to take these tough choices? So you have Steve Barclay, when he was Health Secretary, making clear he tried to take out, well, reportedly, try and take action, and it wasn't allowed by other parts of the government because they're worried about who's going to care for people. So there was a problem here in this country. We want to get more Brits off benefits and into work. Mel Stride, who's working as Pension Secretary, trying to do that. It's challenging though, and so the solution has been in the past to bring in labour from overseas. And then that's controversial because it pushes up the net migration number and puts pressure on public services. It's not easy to square this circle, and that's why the government's trying hard to do it. And it's frustrating, I think, for people like Steve Barclay. We know that Suella Braverman was equally concerned when she was Home Secretary. Their ideas are blocked by the centre.
Chris, here's a question for you. Rishi Sunak's been going around today trumpeting the fact that we've recruited record numbers of NHS workers to try and get down those waiting lists. Of course, that's one of his 5 pledges. And that figure has ostensibly been achieved by these work visas for NHS workers and care workers. It begs the question, is the government actually disinterested in stopping this issue because it's become reliant on cheap labour? We discovered yesterday that these people are paid 20% less than a British worker. We've gone from on your bike Britain to on your backside Britain because people simply can't afford to take these low-paid jobs, and we have a health service addicted to cheap foreign labour.
Well, just to break that down there, Martin, the 20% discount is in certain sectors where there's a labour shortage. The Migration Advisory Committee, this public government body, looks at those areas and takes submissions from industry bodies. Then they can, if there is a shortage and Brits can't fill those jobs, then you can bring in someone on less than the £26,000 a year threshold, below which you can't arrive. So you can bring somebody on 24,000, 23,000 a year. One idea in government right now is to increase that threshold to 35,000. That's Robert Jenrick's idea, the immigration minister, or 40,000. That's what Suella Braverman is pushing for, and Boris Johnson, the former prime minister. So lifting that level should make the jobs more attractive, possibly, to British workers because they can't be taken by migrant workers. But there is a problem here of how do you fill these roles. They do want to bring down the NHS waiting list. I think it was 7 million, I think, from memory, waiting for operations, made worse by about 1.7 or so million cancelled operations caused by the various strikes in the NHS. They have now got to deal with the consultants, so the operations will start ticking up, and hopefully that waiting list will start to come down sometime next year. The nurses got a worse deal, of course. It's very complicated. It does feel the government is slowly trying to grip it. There's no question they do understand the urgency. Separate all that, we have got plans to deal with the Rwandan people arriving by boats who are then meant to be taken to Rwanda. I understand, GB can understand that the legislation was published the week after next, and it's likely to try and not apply human rights to certain migrants arriving here illegally, to try and ensure that judges or lawyers can't stop them being taken to Rwanda. They want to get this legislation published, as I say, the week after next, to allow time for the House of Lords to consider it. It will fly through the House of Commons using the Tory majority, I would expect, but the Lords is difficult, and that is threatening, I think, the first planes taking off the Mr Sunak plans in May next year. It's very, very complicated. You're going to cross a lot of area on immigration policy in this conversation, Martin. It's not easy for the government, but they're being paid to do it.
Yeah, we had Kate Hoey on the show a couple of weeks ago, and she said that she absolutely expects the Rwanda policy to face huge resistance in what she called the House of Remainers, the House of Lords, and so they won't get an easy ride through there. But back to this visa thing quickly, Chris. I looked at these care jobs, these NHS jobs, on a quick Google search, and they're being advertised at well below the 26,000 salary, 21,800 for London, with full relocation and visa services being offered by agencies that are simply hoovering people in from abroad to fill these posts. Presumably they're taking a £4,000 cut. That's where the 20% wage goes. And as we've seen previously with fruit picking jobs, if we're having a situation where labour is being harvested from abroad to fill this vacuum that we have in the UK, British people can't afford to take these jobs. The NHS wants to keep its bills down. Whitehall, as we keep seeing, is pro-migration by the looks of it. So we're caught in this terminal bind where we don't seem to be able to get out of the situation whatsoever, Chris.
The trick is more Brits should try and do these jobs. Now, I can remember back to Gordon Brown 2008 saying he wanted to see more British jobs for British workers. That became after, of course, the government opened the gates to Eastern Europeans being able to come here, the A2 and the A8 accession countries back in the 2000s. There's still a problem here. We need to get more Brits willing to work in these care jobs, these different settings where we can't find them. So they are bringing people in from overseas because they've got to. We need more care workers in the health service, particularly in the social care sector. And it seems the best way of doing that is finding them from overseas and discounting the salary they're paid to get them here to bring down so they can get a visa. It is a bind they're in at the moment, and they are trying to deal with it, Martin, and not succeeding.
OK, Chris Hope, thank you for joining us on the show live from Parliament. And thanks to your friend behind you who seems to want some holy intervention in his day. Maybe that's what the Home Office needs, some holy intervention to get out of this unholy mess.